it's a very fierce, very sharp faith. And we were asking how the main trend still to the left, to the right, split the difference, you know, and what measures do we use to, what's our methodology? How do we look at the definition? And speaking of measures, to me, we really have to employ a variety of tools. Just can't rely on one thing, you know. Our primary tool is class, isn't it? You know, the Marxists, Lenin. We look at things through the lens of class to decide if it's a left-wing thing or a right-wing thing or a centrist thing. And those terms, right, left, center, have a history, don't they? Does anybody know why it is that we call conservatives right wing and socialists left wing? Please.
I might be completely wrong, but did it happen during the French Revolution where the conservatives sat on the right of the meeting room?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think the year was 1789. 1789, and they were in the middle of the French Revolution, and they were trying to figure out what to do with Louis XIV. And it was this big assembly hall, and the aristocracy sat on the right of the hall, and the revolution sat on the left. You know? Counter-revolution on the right, revolution on the left. So it is, broadly speaking, today. I make this point because bourgeois ideology, think tank, professors, ascribe or invest what they call cultural definition to left, right, and center. You know, abortion, LGBTQ rights, racism, environmental issues are labeled as identity or cultural issues. Okay? So if you're pro-women, pro-black, pro-queer, pro-Asian, you're on the left. If you're anti, you're on the right. And what they've managed to do, rather successfully, I might add, is redefine placement on the political spectrum on the basis of one's stance in what they call the cultural war, the battle of identity. And they've accomplished that by separating these issues from class issues. And they juxtapose them, put them side by side, and then place them in opposition. We can't let that happen to me, you know, because identity is important. Identity has to do with who we are and our basic rights. Is why I don't like the term identity politics. It was used by certain people as a curse, you know. Identity is a basic part of our ideological structure, in addition to class. What they call identity, we call the struggle for equal rights. And these are basic features of battle for democracy. You know, to be who you want to be, to express yourself the way you want to express yourself, you know, and to have it celebrated. And they have, and that's why we talked about it, right, to understand our culture, right, to have an abortion, and the right to speak our language. You know? And they have taken, and these things have to be taken together with class in order to make a balanced assessment of place on the political spectrum. That's my point. You can't allow the ruling class and its ideologists to play this bait and switch thing. You know, they bait you with identity, and then they switch. Boom, you're on the right. Let me give you another example of what I'm talking about. Polling outfits frequently characterize the African American political sentiment as moderate. Black folks are moderate. And this is because of our purported position on social issues like immigration and LGBT rights. I say purported, because I really don't believe they are what they say. But wait a minute. On the basis of the evidence already presented this afternoon, Black folk is probably the most consistently democratic population in the country. You name it, 52% support socialism, only 40% support capitalism, issues of voting rights, questions of war and peace, issues of criminal justice, the environment, international solidarity. All down the line, we generally come down on the side of progress. And that includes, by the way, older generation. I'm not buying that this thing that young folks are radical and the old heads are a bunch of conservatives. No, I'm not. I don't believe that. Because the old heads are the generation that came up during the 60s, during the civil rights movement, which was a profoundly radicalizing movement. Black liberation movement. I mean, you had SNCC, and SCLC, you had the Panthers, so on and so forth. You don't go through that as people come out on the right. I mean, some people do. Clarence Thomas did. That brother was a special case. So my point is that you can't be one-sided when examining these issues. We're not dealing with either or proposition when assessing man's thought patterns. And that goes for all working class population, including white workers. Sections of whom have been consistently described as conservative and went over to right-wing politics. That's what they say, don't they? The white working class is pro-Trump. But are they really? I'm raising this because we, as a party of the U.S. working class, we have to be responsible and think about the interest of the entire class, not just one part of it, you know? So let's talk about this a little bit more deeply. Where is the working class at today? And where does it fit on the political spectrum? How would we describe its ideological and political complexion? What kind of moment are we living in today? Does anybody want to say, Ryan?
I mean, I think that's why at the beginning of this, I kind of made a point to say the failure of the Democratic Party is why we're dealing with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with now, right? Because I think I do agree that it's a question, right? Is the white working class actually pro-Trump? I think they've just only been reached out to and pandered to by the Republican side, you know? And so that's why oftentimes when you see like the political campaigns doing these very specific like Iowa caucuses and things, they are leaving out a very large majority of the working class when they do these very strategic campaign games, right? Because they are trading in most of the working class for a few people that may agree with their lackluster policies, quite frankly, right? And so to me, I feel like the moment is very important. I still feel like we are in somewhat of a socialist moment, but I can say that living in a very metropolitan area. Whereas when I met some of my comrades that are in parts of middle America, they can't say that as confidently as I can say that living in places like LA and living in places like DC.
That's very interesting question. Very of the Democratic Party. I gotta think about it. Have they failed or have they been rather successful?
I was gonna say they have failed miserably in this department. I was actually thinking about this. I was talking about this with some new comrades that I was talking about this to a comrade that I recently met a few weeks ago, as well as just looking at Virginia, because I done a lot of Virginia politics when I first before I first became a activist. And just looking at those counties, like specifically in Southwestern Virginia and West Virginia, they were very, very impressive. Like even like some counties even voted for Obama like overwhelmingly. And then looking at the data for the past couple of years, they all staunchly freaking voted for Donald Trump. So that has really opened my eyes up a lot of where the Democratic Party is failing. And I feel like one of the biggest failures that the Democrats has been doing, especially in places like Southwestern Virginia or West Virginia, as well as the Midwest in Ohio and Indiana and Michigan, is labor. Labor is so important for us. And I don't think they're voting for Donald. I mean, yes, Donald Trump wants a lot of smoke, but I don't think they voted for Donald Trump because he is who he is. I think they voted for Trump because they're blowing that Trump is blowing enough smoke where they're thinking that he's bleeding something. The Democrats ain't doing a damn thing about helping Black people, but helping people that live in Southwestern Virginia or live in the Midwest. So unfortunately, that's why they lean on him, even though he's not doing anything. But that's why they have to do more things.
Say for in my hometown, used to be consistent Democratic line. Now they vote Republican, straight up and down the line. Anybody, David?
Yeah, no, I agree with the previous two speakers. If you look at the data on who voted for Trump, even white trade unionists, male white trade unionists, there was significant fraction that voted for Trump. Among women, it was less. And the shift away from New Deal policies, neoliberal policies with the Democratic Party has certainly opened up the path to Trump and a neo-fascist movement in this country. And I think that bears on, the center has been discredited. If you want to call the neoliberals the center, that's been discredited. And so we're at a bifurcation between a path to the right or a path to the left. And I think so potentially and I would call it an eco-socialist moment, because the existential question of climate change must be confronted by socialists in this century. That has to be the core for a just transition to win the working class over and to lead that path and defeat the right wing. And by the way, if the revolutionaries were sitting on the right side in 1789, we would be attacked as extreme rightists, right? Right, we would be rightists. So it was an interesting point there. But so I think that the Achilles heel of capitalism now is not only racism, but fossil capital that's promoting a climate healthy humanity. And so defeating fossil capital and its political instruments has to be our priority, I think. And it has to be building a coalition We used to call it an anti-monopoly coalition. I would think we need a broad coalition for a real Green New Deal, not only in the US, but the whole world. And bring in sections of green capital that will build renewable energy with all the problems they create, and then challenge them too, and open up an eco-socialist path. So that's my,
David put a lot on the table.
all right, well.
No, it's good, it's good. I'm glad you made that correction. You're right. We should think about it as an eco-socialist moment. You got fossil capital though, and then you got banking capital, and you got the military industrial sections of capital, and then you got the Silicon Valley sections, and so on. I'm not sure which is first, but which is more immediate, please.
I just really like the way you put it, before we all started talking about, did they fail miserably or did they succeed? And I think that it's the case that they want the same things that we want and dream they failed miserably. But if they want to divide the working class so that they can not have to make difficult decisions and lose donations, then they're doing a great job.
Remember, the Democratic Party is a bourgeois party. You know? It's a capitalist party that incorporates big sections of the working class. But its primary mission as a political entity is to maintain capitalist growth. We never forget that. Trump is wrong. What's his name? The head of the Senate. Not Schumer, but the Republican.
McConnell.
McConnell's wrong. Lindsey Graham's wrong. The Democratic Party, not a socialist party. I mean, hit it on the head. Maybe our discussion should be focused. We keep posing our analysis, talking about the two-party system, mainly promoting populism, and even in our assessment, and what you just said, Joe, from the beginning to end, how you broke it down in terms of that working class broken section, the role of African Americans, the role of Latinos, all that. But I'm wondering, I'm sitting here listening to all this great discussion, and it's valid, and it is important, but I'm wondering still, are we focused on the right thing? You know, and I don't know if we are or we're not. I haven't even answered that in my own mind yet. I'm still searching. I mean, we're on the right path, and we deliberate, and we do this pretty often, and I think we need to. But I'm asking myself, you know, that's a good question. You know, I mean, because I've discussed this 20 years ago, and 20 years before that.
So I'm looking with, from that point of view, you know, from historical point of view. And so I'm wondering, here we are again, facing the same enemy, you know, changing our tactics. Our strategy is not going to be that different, I don't think, because the situation hasn't changed that dramatically. If anything, it has become more intense, you know, and more sharpened. And now we have fascist forces to contend with, which 20 years ago we weren't there, but here we are. You know, so I'm asking myself all these questions.
Let's come back to it at the conclusion. I think it's a good, it's a damn good question. Talking about the political moment for a second, it's clearly a class struggle moment, in my opinion. I mean, it's clearly a class struggle moment. I mean, this year so far, some 453,000 workers have gone out on strike, you know? Last year, the number was 224,000. 2021, 141,000. Who's good at math? That's something like a threefold increase, isn't it? Someone said that if all the UAW workers go out 2023 will boast the largest number of strikes since 1982 or 83. And it's not just the quantity of the strikes, but also their quality. Particularly in the case of the UAW strike, you know, where the president, Brother Sean Fain, is defining repeatedly and consistently the struggle as one between the billionaire class and the working class. Billionaire class and the work. He ain't talking about the middle class, like a lot of these guys and women. He says the billionaire class and the work, and that's huge, you know? It's huge. That's what the old heads call class struggle trade unionism. That's right. Class struggle trade unionism, and it represents a real leap in class consciousness. And the UAW is not alone, you know? They're not alone. It's also the Teamsters, you know? They're talking that talk too. And the flight attendants, you know, the flight attendants and the nurses. Dante, we were at the march, Ryan, we were at the march, the 60th anniversary march, and I heard I don't remember if it was the nurses or the flight attendants, and they gave a hell of a left-wing speech. I was like, okay, you know, a lot of them speeches, I mean, they were okay, but the flight attendants and the nurse, they were throwing stones, you know, ideological boulders. Like, go ahead with your bad self, you know. They were doing it. And hold up, Carl. And there's also been a leap in public support for unions. Polling today indicates 7 in 10 approve unions. And that's huge and new. I saw a headline from AFG. You know, AFG is American Federation of Government Employees, a couple of days ago. That's your union. Yeah. They had bold headlines. 70% of the American people support unions. They were really excited. Then I looked it up. It's 2 years. The article's new, but the polling, they polled that way 2 years ago, you know, which is wonderful. But this also is new. In 2010, for example, favorability for you was only 40%. 2010. Everybody was bemoaning, oh, the unions are going out of style. Nobody wants to be in the union anymore. They're not doing what they need to do. And by the way, that was around the time that Ryan, that shift, and brother man, that shift that took place in southwestern Virginia and Youngstown and other places, because it was NAFTA. It was NAFTA that started that process when the Democratic Party endorsed the North American Free Trade Agreement. People were pissed off and they remained so. So 40% in 2010, and then 2015, it rose 8 points, 48%. And then something happened just before the pandemic, it increased 20 points, 68% favor unions. And now it's 71%, the highest since 1964. 1964. I remember that year very clearly. There was an earthquake in Alaska. And I was a little cat then, and I woke up with a terrible headache every time. And I think Kennedy got killed in '64 too. But it's the headache that I remember in Alaska. But what accounts for this shift in public support for unions? Does anybody know? What happened from 2010 to now. Arturo?
Yes, I just want to say that, I agree with the numbers, what has happened. I heard those things many years ago. Too. I mean, I've been around for many years, and I heard that change in the working class in the numbers, the people who support union and so forth, because the ruling class is also fighting. And they changed the direction. They actually changed the numbers. We may have 80% today, and tomorrow we got 20% of it. Because of something happened that they did and so forth. We have to think, we have two parties now that we are so support. And those parties are basically not a good option for us. We have to build something very new. We have to build it as soon as we can. And I know it's very hard to build, but we have to build it. If we are here for the working class to fight, to struggle to build a movement for socialism, we have to think more to build our own option, basically the working class option. And that's something that we have not addressed, and we are too afraid to tackle that. We need to do that, basically, because we're not going to have it any other way. You know, the issues, the unions are excellent. But God damn it, they go to the right. Look at the FLCA already supporting Biden immediately without even having to see what it's doing. And Biden is taking our money and giving and starting more wars instead of putting the money in the people's needs and so forth. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be. It don't show me to me that shit. Goodbye, buddy. We need to have something new. And we need to build it and take a chance to build it. I know we don't have the population to do it, but we can do it. We can do it because our role is not only building ourselves, but organizing the process and making sure the other groups are with us and so forth. So it takes a little bit of struggle.
Our role is building a movement, isn't it?
The other thing that we have to think about, we are here in DC. Watching the metropolitan area, because I know everybody from the metropolitan, we have to be focused on what is happening in our city in the metropolitan area, and we need to build from there what is happening, because we're not going to build the whole country, we're going to build Washington DC. We have a city council here, and it's very open to talk to us. So a lot open, basically, at least they talk to Sally Jones. So basically, they're open to talk to us. We need to focus some of this lecture on how do we build here locally, which is important, and how do we extend this tool to the working class people in our community, to Blacks, Latinos, and everybody who have a need to be with us. So I think we need to really, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're talking about, but I'm very concerned about my life and what is our future.
Okay, well, I'm not done yet. Give me a chance. There is the statehood party here. You do have a third party in DC. I mean, there's that.
Green Party.
And the Green Party too.
No, it's the statehood.
Statehood Green Party. Y'all made a shift since I was here back in the day. The hand in the corner, blue shirt.
Oh, yeah, to your question on like why that big shift.
That's the question.
Yeah, I think like if you're saying there's like a shift in around 2010, I think a lot of people are realizing like losing their jobs and realizing, or their neighbor loses their job and they realize it has nothing to do with anything they did, like whether they were good at their job or not. They just lost it because of the economic situation, you know. And then in 2020, you know, a lot of people are either out of a job or like forced to work a job that's very dangerous through a terrible world pandemic. And they hear a lot of talk about like how much people respect what was the term, necessary workers.
Essential workers.
And then they saw people are essential, but they're still making minimum wage, you know? And they realized that just like the media talk about essentialism isn't gonna change how much those people are making and whether their jobs are safe or not, and that they gotta advocate for themselves, and are realizing the only way that they can do that is through organizing, through being together in unity.
Then the wages haven't gone up, really, the real wages ain't gone up in half a century, you know? Green shirt, you with the mask. No, you're pointing to yourself. Oh, okay, go on.
I think it's a combination of the factors. I think it's a combination of capitalism allowed or acting crazy, as well as state and local governments acting crazy. Specifically, like here in DC, why people are pushing why that they should have from 2020 to today. It's just with state and local governments, as well as state and local governments is focusing so much on capitalism and making the lower middle class foot the bill when it comes to things. It's pushing people to organize, it's pushing people to push even further left.
Okay. Now you, and then I want to move the discussion, because we still got ground to cover. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to build off of what Archer said, and I think a lot of broader left-wing and progressive organizations in the United States, as far as building a separate option between the two-party system or outside of the two-party system, jumps the gun and immediately goes to electoralism and immediately tries to run candidates against Democratic or Republican politicians. In Philadelphia specifically, they had a progressive, her name was Helen June. She wasn't a socialist, she wasn't much of a left-wing figure, but she lost in the most poor and specifically the overwhelmingly African-American neighborhoods in Philadelphia, in Western Philadelphia. And I think looking at that and that extreme failure that she experienced in a working class city, you can see that you can't just run candidates, you can't just try to get publicity. You have to build the relationships with the communities, with the institutions of the communities. You have to, because even though Sherrod Parker, the Democratic candidate that did win, and that is likely going to be the next mayor of Philadelphia, even though her policies will hurt the working people of Philadelphia, she had connections with the communities, with the poor communities, with the Black communities, and with the communities that the left should be the ones to represent. She was able to win them over because she had those relationships, whereas the progressives barely ever even tried to build them and relied overly on the educated college, largely white progressives that Bernie Sanders moved over.
We had to rebuild the left, the working class left in this country, don't we? That's part of what you're saying. I agree with you 100%. Good friend of mine, hold up now, good friend of mine ran in that city, Seth Oberman. And he came within 200 votes of winning. Can we move the discussion just a little bit? Y'all want to kick it a little bit more? Move it? Yeah? Okay. So what accounts for it? 2018, since 2018, there's been a big upsurge in strike activity, right? Starting with the teacher strikes in 2018, 2019. Where'd that start? I think West Virginia. It was wildcat strikes. And then they started in other places around the country. And then the auto workers went out at General Motors, 2019, 48,000 hit the picket lines. And then in 2021, 2022, you had Starbucks, you had Amazon, so on. And that prompted a lot of the excitement. And now I'm gonna say something controversial. You also have to take a look at the role that the trade unions played in the 2020 election, which is a story, in my opinion, that has not been fully told. And then, because if it wasn't for the trade unions, Biden wouldn't be president, it's true. And he got elected. And he says, I'm the most pro-union president in history. And we can debate that, but he did set up a union-friendly National Labor Relations Board. And that's been important. And this shift in public opinion has been so much so that Mr. Biden felt that he could stand on a UAW picket line. First time it happened in the history of this country, and there wouldn't be too much blowback, you know? And objectively, whatever you think about Mr. Biden, that's important. You know, Gus Hall, who was the former general secretary and chairman of the Communist Party, he used to say that the main thing about a US president, in fact, the essence of being a US president, was to be able to rule without offending, without being offensive to the least amount of people in his class. You know, that was the essence of being a US president. And so there is an objective process taking place in the country which allowed that to happen. Of course, Mr. Biden's bag is at best mixed, as we can see what happened with the railway workers' strike, right? Where he and his cohorts in Congress prevented that strike last year, a position with which we took sharp issue. I'm making that point, and I'm underlining it because I don't want y'all going out of here and saying, heard Joe Sims from the Communist Party, and Saturday he was up there tooting Joe Biden's horn. I ain't shooting nobody's horn. That's for little boy Blue, no two horns. Maybe Miles Davis could toot a horn. Right? I'm just trying to be to give us a sense of what some of the processes are that are taking place in the country. So when it comes to class struggle, there's been a rise in class consciousness, and things are moving in a better direction. There are also other indications of mass thought patterns that we should take note of. And here we're talking about working class attitudes on race, on gender, and on LGBTQ equality. For example, did you know that in 2018, affirmative action for people of color was supported by 62% of the population, 2018? It's true. Would you be surprised that the same holds true for women? According to Gallup in 2021, affirmative action was supported by women, 66% of those polled, 72% of women, and 61% of men. You won't be surprised if I said that abortion rights are supported by majorities in this country. 61% opposed the Dobbs decision. LGBTQ rights, according to the data I saw, a supermajority, 84% of non-LGBTQ folks in this country support equal rights for the LGBTQ community. Of course, we have to be careful when talking about this data because support depends on the particular questions that you ask. If you say affirmative action, people say, oh, hell yeah. But if you say race, use race, and oh, no, stop. Step back, we're not doing that, you know. And of course, you can say 84% support gay rights, but trans rights are under fierce assault in this country, legislatively, politically. In fact, their lives are in danger. And we have to be careful in general when considering issues of equality for people of color, women, and LGBTQ folk, recognizing that we're dealing with systems of institutionalized inequality that are deeply ingrained in the political economy and the body politic and the superstructure legal system of this country. And each community is under fierce attack, be it on the issue of voting rights, abortion rights, trans rights, so on and so forth. Huh? That fact, however, makes the prevalence, in my view, of these majoritarian views all the more important. Why? Because it shows that there's a solid foundation upon which to fight. If we can work effectively in those communities, my brother, that you were talking about, in those working class, from the ground up and at the grassroots. And that's important because the country is up against powerful trends that are moving in the opposite direction. In this regard, now I'm coming to what some of y'all were saying in the back of the room. There is a tremendous loss of faith in government in this country. About 6 in 10 either express not too much confidence or no confidence at all in the future of the US political system. Only 4% say US bourgeois democracy is working well. Actually, I'm lying. They didn't say bourgeois democracy. Bourgeois is my word. They said democracy, working well. 16% say they trust the government to all or most of the time. Only 37% say have confidence in the Supreme Court. Big surprise there, right after Dobbs and affirmative action. Only 32% trust Congress to do its job. And it won't surprise you that this has to do with both political parties. According to one poll, Gallup, both parties have unfavorable ratings of over 55%. Pew says 25% don't feel represented by either party. Hence, we have to conclude that there is a growing crisis of confidence in the US government and state as a whole. And that is affecting their ability to govern. And when a country's ruling class, when its ability to govern is affected, that produces the potential for what we call a revolutionary situation. Doesn't it? And Marx and Engels and Rosa Luxemburg and Clara Zetkin and Claudia Jones said there were 2 conditions for the existence of a revolutionary situation. Does anybody know what they are? 2 conditions. 1,
The governability of the state.
huh?
The governability of the states.
That the ruling class cannot rule in the old way. Number 1. What's the second condition?
That's like that those classes not also lived in the old way anymore.
That the people are not willing to be governed in the old way. And when that happens, watch out. Watch out. Now, I'm not saying that we're in such a situation today. But when you look at what happened on January 6th, it gives you an idea about some of the turmoil that is being stirred up, you know. I want to say from below. I'm not so sure it's from below, because you got that astroturf kind of phenomenon going on. And you know, talk about a crisis. It's deep what's happening in this country. Do you know that 1 in 6 people polled believe that the United States is run by Satan worshiping child molesters?
Yeah.
1 in 6. That's a whole lot of people. It reminds me of a poll I saw 15 years ago about Republicans in New Jersey. And it struck me that this was New Jersey. This wasn't Mississippi, Oklahoma, New Jersey. It said that 40% of those polled believed that Obama was the Antichrist. 40%. And the 15%, another 15% weren't sure. And it was the 15% that got me. Which, this is that, what do they call that, QAnon kind of thing going on? It brings us to the issue of the MAGA right. 2/3 of them believe the election was stolen. They polled them. They asked them a question in one poll. They said, if your preferred candidate is a racist, would that prevent you from voting for him or her? Nope. I'll vote for him anyway. They said the same thing about anti-Semitism. Your preferred candidate is an anti-Semite. Will you vote for him? Yep. Yeah. They don't care, 80% of them say America is in danger of losing its culture and identity. And that's why they were marching, talking about Jews will not replace us, right? Huh? Isn't that what they said? Marching with them torches. 56% say America has changed so much that they often feel like a stranger in their own country. And you add all of that up, and what does it equal? I mean, are we still in a socialist moment, or is something else happening? And I don't know. And I want to end with this thought. I'm not sure. You want to speak to this, Jaime? Go ahead.
The question for us as a Communist Party, what are we going to plan for in terms of being the answer to the masses that are already moving in the right because they're so influential right now? And that's the question. That's what we have to build the organization. Point blank. That's it. How are we going to do that is the next question. We have to build relationships in the community. The way we've been doing it, fine. But we need to do much better than what we've been doing. Where are the relationships that we have in the neighborhood when we are promoting a particular issue? Be it housing or whatever that might be. How many people can we gather that are going to support us as soon as we contact them? That's the point. That's the level of recognition of the party. That's the level that only speaks to the relationship building that has taken place and whether that what kind of relation that comrade has with the neighborhood. And that will determine a whole lot of things because right now we're out of sync. Right now, we need to build on a serious level. Right now, we don't have a lot of the soldiers to put it in that. But we don't have the bodies, put it like that. I'm gonna get away from the soldier thing. We don't have the bodies to do the kind of work. So then we have to think, well, how do we get to a certain point in the party so that we can really build what we know that we have to do? That is the question. Organize, build. That is what we need to start.
And we have to find popular methods for doing that too. It's not just demonstration, right?
Exactly.
It's not just strikes, It's
Let's keep fighting, man.
We gotta keep fighting, but how we fight is important, you know? It's also, I heard y'all trying to organize a festival, a cultural festival like Claudia Jones did in the UK. You know, a left-wing people's festival, so that culture becomes, huh?
And it was very.
And it was, well, I was reminding David about the Youth Festival of the Arts back in the day.
I agree that that's one of the popular part.
It's one of
We
them,
need to do marches, we need to do marches all the time.
of course,
We're fighting every single day.
every single day.
We are, in particular, young people, I'm older now, but young people, maybe they want action. They
That's
wanna
right.
move, they wanna do things, and if we are too slow, we're gonna disappear.
And we see that that action is taking place in relationship to what happened in Gaza. You know, there, and I'm surprised actually. Because what happened after 9/11, it took a while before the democratic and peace movement was able to gain traction. It did. And the initial reaction to the invasion was quite narrow. You know, even the I mean, it was like the extreme left, nobody else. And even parts of the extreme left didn't show, but it was such a traumatic moment in the life of the country, you know. There was anger and fear and anguish and angst and all of, and the same thing is occurring in the wake of what happened, tragedy 2 weeks ago. So I'm not sure, comrades, friends, siblings. I mean, we know that the country is divided. We know that there's a hard knot of reaction on the right that encompasses about a third of the population. And we know that somewhere is around 2/3 of the rest of the country is opposed, but it's kind of a mixed bag. And speaking of the distribution of the electorate, and I'm sorry to throw so much data at you, but independents outnumber Democrats and Republicans today. I mean, 49% of all Americans see themselves as political independents. I'm a political independent. I never joined the Democratic Party. And 49%, which is the same as the two major parties combined. That's new. There is a search, Jaime, for something new, as you said. It's hard to get around that while keeping our eye on the fascist danger. We can never take our eye off of the fascist danger. You take your eye off of it for a second, you end up either dead or in jail. I say keeping our eye on it because that's what that no labels business is all about. You know, they're trying to organize this political party supposedly on the basis of what's practical. We're not right, we're not left, bullshit. It's a stalking horse for the Republican Party, that's what it is. But we are on the verge of something new and very powerful. And the question for me is not whether or not it's the old socialist moment, whether or not that moment still obtains, but can we produce a new socialist moment? A socialist 2.0 moment on the basis of these powerful currents that are sweeping the country. Class struggle currents, anti-racist currents, anti-sexist, anti-imperialist currents opposed to discrimination against people on the basis of their sexual orientation. To me, that's the question. Can we go further than the social democratic socialist moment of the second decade of this century, which is kind of a liberal left concept of socialism? to a revolutionary, democratic, advanced democratic, that's small d, not big D, socialist moment centered on advancing the interests of our entire working class. Black, brown, Asian, Arab, Native American, Asian and Pacific, Islander, able-bodied and disabled. Because socialism is about power. It's about working class power. It's about the power of women, the power of people of color, the power of the least of these who produce the most, and its distribution in the state and the economy. And that is what's going to produce what David calls this eco-social, I think he's right, 2.0. And to do that, we need a bigger Marxist left. We need a bigger Communist Party. We need a much more extensive proliferation of public Marxist schools, like the Claudia Jones School, to teach, to proselytize, to agitate, to educate, to organize for power. And when that happens, ain't gonna be no stopping us. So thank you for this opportunity to talk with you. I enjoyed it very much. And congratulations on the Claudia Jones School.
Well, thank you. First off, thank you so much, Joe. That was an incredible way to open up this series.